Let's turn to Chris Garcia. He's the former Deputy Director of the U.S. Department of Commerce for the Trump administration. Chris, nice to have you with us. And Chris, U.S. stocks in the red, European indices as well. The DAX and the CAC down over 1.6%. What is causing this market reaction? Is it linked to Turkey?
Sure. Yeah, of course it is. What we see is anytime you see some type of tariff announcement made, it's going to affect the markets. But you saw that kind of taper off a little bit as the day closed. We're going to look at this as probably not, and I think this is a kind of an unconventional view to take, but I think this is not just about the steel and aluminum tariffs. I think this is probably a political maneuver as well. As you know, we have the American pastor and 8 Americans who are still detained in Turkey after President Erdogan of Turkey believed that they were involved in the coup. And so I think this is more than just the steel and aluminum tariffs that are affecting, of course, it's the steel and aluminum tariffs affecting the market, but it's more than just the steel and aluminum tariffs that the president's trying to ratchet up pressure against Turkey for.
Right. Well, certainly Turkey's economy hasn't been in good shape, regardless of these tariffs. Investor confidence down with Erdogan's authoritarian regime. Is there concern, then, of financial contagion from a Turkey economic collapse?
Sure, yeah, that's what we're seeing. I think that's why the market reacted in the way that it did. But I think this is just a short-term tactic. I wouldn't be surprised if this has something to do with the closer relationship that Turkey has begun to strike up with Russia. I think there's also, as I said, the political matter to discuss about the American hostages that are held in Turkey. But I also wouldn't put it past the administration to use these tariffs as a tactic to get Turkey to play ball and perhaps cooperate with the United States against Iran and the relationship that we are looking to maneuver there. So I think there's a much bigger picture to look at than just the financial means. Right, and of course it all goes back to investor confidence. Chris, the U.S. has sanctions in place on Iran, North Korea, new ones on Russia, several other countries. There are tariffs and threats of tariffs on a number of countries. At what point could sanctions possibly lose their efficacy? Could the U.S. at some point be in danger of over-sanctioning? Now, granted, all for worthwhile and important issues and causes, but could the U.S. find itself too economically isolated at some point with all these sanctions in place? Well, so I don't think that's going to happen because the president, if you recall, is using this as a short-term tactic to get these trade partners to the table. Let's take a look at NAFTA for a moment. We have, again, trade talks happening with Mexico. It looks like those are going to still hit the deadline, the target of August 25th, to try to wrap things up with Mexico. That's going to allow the United States to go back to Canada with a much more strong position to try to renegotiate NAFTA, the sunset clause. Of course, Canada's taking some exception to the sunset clause, but really what the president's doing is he's using these as a tactic to get these parties to the table. And frankly, NAFTA did need to be renegotiated. The United States was willing to pay a handsome sum during the Cold War era to have assurances from allies for protection against the Soviet expansion. That's no longer the case. So I think we need to revisit these agreements. The president's using these tariffs as a tactic to get these parties back to the table. Understood. And hopefully that tactic yields results. Chris, thank you so much. Appreciate you being with us. Chris Garcia. Thanks. All right. Well.